tomorrow. Is he?
As Trudeau's political troubles mounted, his personal life began to fall apart. Margaret was becoming increasingly frustrated with her role as Prime Minister's wife.
I suppose every person asks themselves just how much can they take. I certainly am no exception. I think I can take quite a bit, as long as I'm getting in return, as long as I feel myself nourished, as long as I feel that my husband loves me and that my children need me, and that I have some worthwhile thing that I can do, and as long as I can love myself, which I think is important too, I know I can carry on.
And she did carry on. Trudeau tried to be understanding.
I was Prime Minister before, I remained Prime Minister after. I was still doing the same kind of work, but for a wife to come into this, she's expected to adapt suddenly to this whole new life. Sometimes she has to do it practically overnight. She has to do it being very young, and I've certainly drawn conclusions about the difficulty of women assuming their husband's identity.
1977, Margaret is increasingly seen in night spots with other men. It became a scandal when she was romantically linked with a member of the Rolling Stones. The marriage began to disintegrate in a messy tabloid wave of publicity. The love life of a very private man was again everybody's business.
So it seems like such an extraordinary thing that such a private person that doesn't want to have his private life shown around to be caught in a situation like that.
Margaret was out of control, and Trudeau had to struggle to contain himself.
In cabinet, he was a little more distracted, I know that, and he certainly was showing worse temper than usual. I mean, boy, we gave him a wide berth at that time.
It got worse. Margaret ran off to France to make a B movie. She happily autographed tabloid stories that insinuated she was having an affair with a film crew member. It was the end.
He couldn't give up his work for me, and therefore we couldn't
stay together.
No.
Well, it's obvious that he suffered a lot during that period. There's no doubt about that. He suffered, and he loved Margaret very deeply.
And and we kept up this fiction that he was fine, but he was hurting a lot. A lot. I mean, he really adored her, and I think he felt very betrayed.
He still would be the same person in our relationship. And I think I've decided that he's not the man for me.
Trudeau was a bachelor again. There were many discreet liaisons in the years after his separation and divorce.
There were some good moments in that regard, and he tended to see his lady friends, and they were a pretty spectacular bunch, at Meech Lake. And I'll never forget flying into Meech Lake in a helicopter once and seeing the kids and this quite gorgeous blonde, waiting for the thing to arrive, and the thing comes down, and of course he rushes out, braces the kids, then gives her a bit, and then we pull off, and I see them all going offhand, and I thought, gee, this is unbelievable, nobody knows,
For 7 years, his most frequent companion was internationally known classical guitarist Leona Boyd.
I think some of our most wonderful moments when it was just quiet, when we were right out of the limelight, just, I say, being at one with nature, enjoying a stroll in the evening, or sitting and looking up at the stars. And he would sometimes quote to me from one of his favorite writers, Pierre de Chardin. He had a very sensitive side to him, very gentle, very tender. And you hear that in his voice. I've always loved his voice. He's a little French lilt, but he's completely bilingual. He used to call me Léonard.
And with Miss Boyd, Pierre was adventurous.
Pierre was a nature child. He loved to skinny dip, and so did I. I mean, now I can't imagine how we would do that and walk around naked. But listen, this was the 70s, and things have changed.
You should read about the Bacchanalian rituals.
Trudeau's private life became part of the popular culture with a play called Maggie and Pierre.
You might say, I want it all. Trying to decide
The
what to do with my
actor
life?
experienced the legendary Trudeau charm firsthand.
And I was just standing there, and he looked at me, walked over to me, and extended his hand across the cord and drew me into the ballroom. And it was just like, he was just fantastic. He was utterly the way I wanted him to be, the way one part of the country wants one part of him to be. He was courtly and elegant and Douglas Fairbanksian, and he was utterly generous and open with me.
Back home at 24 Sussex Drive, Trudeau made his major priority being a single father to his 3 sons. One of his great strengths was his ability to compartmentalize his life, to leave the office at the office.
I could never feel when, for example, he was having a rough day or when he wasn't. You know, when he was with us, he was consistent and a very, very laid-back, casual.
To his kids, he was just Dad.
He did a certain amount of showing us his straight-A report cards when he was impatient with us. You know, and he passed on a lot of the same simple principles. Okay, you know, don't fight unless you have to. If you have to, do. If you get expelled from school, you're on your own.
Family and us were a way and are a way for him to know himself in a deep way, you know, in a not so rational way. And I think that was very important to him. That was one of the few things that was true to him and real to him, was us, his family.
Okay, and smoke's going up. Smoke's going up.
Mm-hmm.
Justin's going up. Okay?
Okay.
Bonsoir.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Justin. Here.
Not bad.
Bonsoir.
He had now been in power 11 years. Time to take stock.
I must say when I was younger, though, I probably did emphasize the importance of not being earnest, of not taking myself too seriously and not taking other people too seriously. Might have been a bit of a pose or a defensive mechanism, or perhaps a defensive mechanism, a kind of a hedging against possible failure. If I'd fail, well, it wasn't all that serious, so it isn't all that, you know, in social conduct and so on. But I was serious about some things. I guess I was probably more serious about those things where I didn't think I was going to fail.
By 1979, he was poised for the biggest failure of his life. Our enthusiasm for him had evaporated, and Trudeau seemed to be as sick of us as we were of him.
What'd you get, about $12,000–$14,000 a year? What are you beefing about? You're living on... You don't have to be a postal worker if you don't want. There's other people who'll take your job.
Don't ask me questions if you don't want my answers, you creep.
He was a visible part of Canadians' lives all the time for 16 years. And they got tired of Nanny. They got tired of the hectoring. They got tired of being called to grand events. They wanted a rest. Give me a break already.
Goodbye, Pierre. Joe Clark won a minority government. And for the first time in his public life, Trudeau's mask cracked.
you know, everybody was in tears, and Trudeau was crying. He was crying all the way down past the block there, right to the steps, and then he just kind of, you know, got his act together.
He was a loser, but he put on a brave show.
With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it's still a beautiful world. Strive to be happy.
He had a final word for his adversaries in the press.
I can say that I enjoyed working with you, and if I can be permitted to turn around a phrase, I would say that I'm kind of sorry I won't have you to kick around anymore.
There's a playfulness about him, and we saw that playfulness in May of '79, when at this August moment of the change in government, we saw the playful feature Pierre Trudeau driving himself in his own car of a sporty kind that was bound to attract attention, and taking that moment away.
Time for the master showman to exit the stage.
He didn't bother to open the boxes and put, you know, his painting on the walls. I mean, see, he didn't look like a guy that was ready to settle for Stoneway for 4 years. But that being said, I don't know what he had in his mind, but he really thought it was the end of his career.
But we didn't realize what we had until it was gone. Hoping there were a few more sparks left, we would welcome Trudeau back for an encore performance.